After my husband's funeral, I said absolutely nothing about the $50 million inheritance and the mansion in Italy. I stayed completely silent while everyone cried and muttered about what would happen next. I kept quiet when my daughter-in-law, Lillian, started talking about reorganizing the house and new beginnings. I didn't open my mouth when I noticed the looks she and my son, Robert, exchanged. Those looks filled with plans that did not include me. Returning home after the burial, still in the grey dress I had worn to the cemetery, I heard the words I never imagined hearing from my own son. Robert, the baby I brought into the world 40 years ago, the boy I nursed and cared for through every feverish night, looked at me with cold eyes and screamed, "Pack your junk and get out. Your place is on the street." I simply lowered my head in silence. I felt my hands trembling, felt the air grow heavy in my lungs, and in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything forever. But before I tell you what I did, before I reveal the secret I was keeping in my purse at that very moment, I need to take you back in time. I need you to understand who I was, who Sebastian was, and how we built everything they believed was theirs. It was 1978 when I met Sebastian. I was 22 years old and working in a small bakery in downtown Philadelphia. My hands smelled of flour all the time. My feet ached at the end of every shift, but it was honest work. Sebastian came in every morning at 7 o'clock. He always ordered the same thing, a black coffee and fresh baked bread. For 3 months, we only exchanged good mornings and shy smiles, those smiles that say more than words ever could. Until one rainy day, when he saw me leave work without an umbrella, he offered me his. We walked together under that fine rain, just enough to feel the cold on my skin. In those 15 minutes, I discovered he had a dream, to build his own import company. He had no money, barely a small rented space in the industrial zone, but he had something that shone in his eyes. He had hope, he had ambition, and he had a heart that beat at the same rhythm as mine. We got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the neighborhood church. My dress was ivory, bought from a thrift store, but when Sebastian looked at me that day, I felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. We had next to nothing. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment where the paint was peeling off the walls and the hot water only worked in the mornings. But we were happy. My God, we were so happy. I quit the bakery and started working with him. In the beginning, it was just the two of us. I answered the phone, did the invoices, cleaned the office, and prepared coffee for clients. Sebastian went out looking for contracts, convincing businessmen that he could get them the best products from Europe at the best prices. We worked 16 hours a day, ate sandwiches at the desk, and at night, when we finally got home, we would hold each other in the narrow bed and plan our future. 3 years later, Robert was born. I remember the exact moment I saw him for the first time. He had his father's eyes and my small nose. Sebastian cried when he held him. He cried like a child. He promised me that day that he would build an empire for us, that our son would never experience the hardships we had. And he kept his promise. Little by little, the company grew. From 1 employee, we went to 5, then to 20, then to 50. I continued working even with a small Robert. I brought him to the office in his stroller, nursed him between meetings, and changed his diapers in the bathroom that also served as a storage room. We were a team, Sebastian and I. Every decision we made together, every risk we faced, hand in hand. When Robert was 10 years old, we bought our first house. It wasn't big, but it had a yard where he could play and windows that let the sun in every morning. I remember the day we moved. Sebastian carried me across the threshold, just like on our wedding day, and the 3 of us sat on the empty living room floor eating pizza and laughing at the absurdity of having so much space. The years passed quickly. Robert grew up. The company continued to grow. Sebastian travelled more. I made sure the house was a home he wanted to return to. I cooked his favourite dishes, kept his clothes ironed, and listened to his concerns every night before bed. We were more than husband and wife. We were life partners, partners in every sense. And then when Robert was 27 years old, he met Lillian. The first time I saw her, I thought she was charming. She came home with a wide smile and a beige dress that highlighted her slim figure. She hugged me and called me Mum Margaret from the start. She brought flowers for me and a bottle of wine for Sebastian. She told us about her family, her studies in administration, and how much she loved our son. Sebastian squeezed my hand under the table that night. I returned the gesture. We both wanted to believe Robert had found someone special. We wanted to believe our family was growing in the right way. They got married a year later. The wedding was big, elegant, in a ballroom with crystal chandeliers and tables decorated with white roses. I wore a champagne-coloured dress and danced with my son while Sebastian watched us with tears in his eyes. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed as it should be. But perfect things, I discovered later, almost never truly are. The first months after the wedding were quiet. Robert and Lillian lived in their own apartment, came for dinner on Sundays, and everything seemed to function like a normal family. Lillian helped me in the kitchen, asked for recipes, and told me about her job at a marketing firm. I wanted to believe I had found not just a daughter-in-law, but a daughter. But there were small things, things so subtle that at first I thought it was my imagination. Comments that sounded like compliments but left a sharp sting. "Oh, Mum Margaret, your blouse is so pretty. It's so vintage, so from another era." Or when I served dinner, "This looks delicious, although I prefer to cook lighter, for health." Always with a smile. Always with that sweet tone that made it impossible to object without sounding like the bitter mother-in-law. Sebastian didn't notice either. Or maybe he didn't want to notice. He was so happy to see Robert married, so proud of his son, that he dismissed anything I mentioned with a kiss on the forehead and an, "Honey, you're seeing things that aren't there." 2 years after the wedding, Robert came with news. He and Lillian wanted to move into our house. "Only temporarily," my son said, without looking me directly in the eyes. "We're saving up to buy something better. And you know this house is huge. You have 4 empty rooms. It would be perfect." I looked at Sebastian. He was already nodding. "Son, this is your house too. It always will be." I didn't say anything. What could I say? He was my son. It was our family. I was supposed to be happy to have them close. They moved in a week later, and with them came the change. Lillian started reorganizing things. "Margaret, don't you think this furniture is very old-fashioned? We should modernize a little." She replaced the living room curtains, those cream-colored curtains I had chosen so carefully, with grey, minimalist ones. She moved the paintings Sebastian and I had bought on our travels. "These landscapes are so depressing, mother-in-law. The house needs more light, more cheer." She started cooking herself. "Rest, Margaret. You've done enough in your life. Let me spoil the men of the house." And so, little by little, I ceased to be necessary in my own kitchen. Sebastian ate what Lillian prepared and said it was delicious. Robert didn't even ask about my dishes. Family dinners changed. Now they talked about things I didn't understand. Apps, social media, crypto investments. When I tried to join the conversation, Lillian smiled condescendingly. "Oh, mother-in-law, these things are very complicated. Don't worry about understanding them." Robert began to see me differently. I was no longer Mum. I was Margaret, as if the title of mother had evaporated along with my place at the table. When I asked him about his day, he responded in monosyllables. When I tried to hug him, he stiffened. Sebastian was working more than ever. At 65 years old, he still went to the office every day, closing deals, expanding the business. Sometimes I think he took refuge in work to avoid seeing what was happening at home. Or maybe he saw it and didn't know how to stop it without causing a family breakdown. One night I found him sitting in the yard, looking at the stars. I sat next to him in silence. After a while, he took my hand. "Are you okay, my love?" he asked me. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to tell him I felt invisible, that every day I felt smaller in the house we had built together. But when I opened my mouth, only, "I'm fine, just tired," came out. He kissed my forehead. "We worked so hard, Margaret. So hard. But it was worth it, right? Look at everything we have. Look at our family." I nodded and leaned my head on his shoulder. But inside, something was breaking. Months passed. Temporarily turned into a year, then 2. Lillian no longer asked if she could change things. She simply did. She hired a maid. "So you don't have to get tired cleaning, mother-in-law." But the truth is, I no longer had anything to do. The maid cooked, cleaned, did laundry. I became a guest in my own home. I started spending more time in my room. I read books, looked out the window, remembered the days when this house was full of laughter and purpose. Sometimes I went down to the kitchen at midnight, when everyone was asleep, just to feel like I still belonged somewhere. One afternoon, 3 years after they moved in with us, I heard Lillian talking on the phone in the living room. I was going down the stairs when I heard my name. "No, Mum. I swear I can't stand it anymore. Living with her is unbearable. She's always there, always watching everything I do. It's like having a shadow that never leaves." She paused. "Yes, I know she's Robert's mum, but he's already on my side. It's only a matter of time. When the old man, you know, when the inevitable happens, this house is going to be ours. And then, yes, we'll live the way we want." I froze on the stairs. My heart was pounding so hard against my chest that I thought I would faint. The old man. That's what she called Sebastian. And she talked about when the inevitable happens, as if she were waiting for it, as if she were counting the days. I went back up to my room without making a sound. I sat on the bed and cried silently, covering my mouth with my hands so no one would hear me. That night, when Sebastian got home from work, I hugged him tighter than ever. He laughed. "What's wrong, my love? Did you miss me that much?" "I always miss you," I said. And it was true. I missed the man I built everything with. I missed when it was just the two of us against the world. He stroked my hair. "I'm tired, Margaret. Very tired. Sometimes I think about retiring, selling everything, and going to live somewhere quiet. Just you and me, like before." "What about Robert?" I asked. Sebastian sighed. "Robert is a grown man. He has his wife. He has his life. He doesn't need us like before." But we didn't go anywhere. The days kept passing, each one heavier than the last. And then, 6 months after that conversation in the yard, Sebastian started feeling unwell. At first it was headaches. Sebastian ignored them, saying it was stress, that he hadn't slept well. I insisted he go to the doctor, but he just told me I was overreacting. "They're just aches, my love. It's normal at our age." But I knew him. I knew every gesture on his face, every change in his voice, and I knew something wasn't right. One morning I found him sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "Sebastian, what's wrong?" I asked, kneeling in front of him. He looked up, and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Fear. It hurts so much, Margaret. So much. That same afternoon, I took him to the hospital. The tests began. MRIs, blood work, X-rays. 2 weeks later, the doctor called us into his office. I remember every detail of that moment. The mint green walls, the smell of disinfectant, the clock on the wall that read 3:15 in the afternoon. Mr. Sebastian, Mrs. Margaret, the doctor began, and from his tone of voice, I knew the news wouldn't be good. The results show a brain tumor. It's large, and in a complicated position. The world stopped. Sebastian squeezed my hand so hard I felt my bones creak. "Is it curable?" he asked, his voice trembling. The doctor looked down. "We can try treatment, but I must be honest with you. The odds are not high. We are talking about months, maybe a year if the treatment works." We left the hospital in silence. In the car, Sebastian broke down crying. My husband, the man who had always been so strong, so sure of himself, was crying like a child. I hugged him while driving with one hand, trying to stay strong for both of us. When we got home, Robert and Lillian were in the living room watching television. "How did it go?" my son asked, without getting off the sofa, without even looking directly at us. "We have to talk," Sebastian said, his voice cracking. We told them. I watched Robert's face go pale, saw him get up to hug his father. "Dad, no, it can't be. We'll find the best treatment, the best doctors. You're not going anywhere." Lillian remained seated, with an expression I couldn't decipher. "What terrible news," she finally said, but her voice sounded hollow, empty of real emotion. The treatment began. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications that left him weak and dizzy. I dropped everything to care for him. I became his nurse, his constant companion. I gave him his medicine at the exact times, went with him to every medical appointment, held him when he vomited, and wiped the sweat from his forehead when fevers struck in the middle of the night. Robert came to visit, but less and less often. "I have a lot of work, Mum," he said. "You know how things are at the office." The office his father had built, the company that would someday be his, but which now didn't seem important enough for him to take a day off to be with the man who gave him everything. Lillian almost never came up to our room. "I'm just so unnerved seeing him like that," she told me once. "I prefer to remember him as he was before. As if Sebastian were already dead. As if he were just a memory." The nights were the worst. Sebastian couldn't sleep because of the pain. I stayed awake with him, holding his hand, telling him stories of our early years together. "Remember when we lived in that awful apartment and the heat broke in the winter," I would say. He smiled weakly. "And you made hot cocoa, and we just held each other all night. We were so happy," he whispered. "With so little, we were so happy." One night, 3 months after the diagnosis, Sebastian asked me to call his lawyer. "I need to take care of some things, Margaret. It's important." The next day, Joaquin, the lawyer who had worked with us for 20 years, came over. They locked themselves in the study for 2 hours. When he came out, Joaquin looked at me with a serious expression. "Margaret, Sebastian loves you very much. Everything he is doing is for you." I didn't understand what he meant at the time. That night, as I gave him his medicine, Sebastian took my hand. "My love, I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I said. "When I'm gone, promise me you'll be strong. Promise me you won't let anyone make you feel less than you are. You built all this with me. All of it. Never forget that." "Don't talk like that," I said, tears in my eyes. "You're going to get better. You're going to get through this." He shook his head slowly. "We both know I'm not. But it's okay. I've lived a wonderful life by your side. I don't regret anything." He paused. "Well, maybe I regret not being tougher with some people, not protecting what was ours better." I didn't know how to respond. I hugged him, and we stayed that way until he fell asleep. The following months were a slow, painful deterioration. Sebastian lost weight, lost hair, lost strength, but he never lost his love for me. Every morning, no matter how bad he felt, he would say, "Good morning, my beautiful love." And I would smile and tell him I loved him, even though inside I was dying along with him. Robert came less and less. Now he only appeared on Sundays, stayed 10 minutes, and left, saying he had engagements. Lillian stopped coming altogether. "It's too depressing," she told Robert, and I heard it from the hallway. "I can't be in that house seeing that. It's morbid." So one afternoon, Sebastian asked me to sit beside him. He was very weak, barely able to speak, but his eyes were still the same eyes that fell in love with me 45 years ago. "Margaret," he whispered, "in the top drawer of my desk, there is an envelope. It's for you. Open it when I'm gone. And remember what I told you. You are stronger than you think." He insisted with the little strength he had left. "Sebastian, please, promise me." "I promise," I said, crying. He smiled. "That's my warrior, the woman who worked side by side with me, the woman who never gave up. That's you. Never forget it." 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Sebastian stopped breathing. I was by his side, holding his hand. I felt the exact moment he left. 1 second he was there, and the next he wasn't. I didn't scream. I didn't cry immediately. I just sat next to him, stroking his face, memorizing every wrinkle, every detail, because I knew that would be the last time I would see him like that, at peace, as if he were only sleeping. When I finally went downstairs to tell them, I found Robert and Lillian having breakfast in the kitchen. "Dad is gone," I said, my voice flat. Robert dropped his coffee cup. Lillian remained motionless, but I noticed something in her gaze, something that looked almost like relief. The funeral was 3 days later. The funeral was in a large church downtown, the same one where we had gotten married 45 years ago. Hundreds of people came, company employees, business partners, lifelong friends, neighbors. Everyone wanted to say goodbye to Sebastian, the man who had built an empire from nothing, the generous man who helped anyone who needed it. I was in the front row, dressed in dark grey, my hands clasped in my lap. Robert was on my right, his eyes red from crying so much. Lillian was next to him, in an elegant black dress and perfect makeup, dabbing tears that I wasn't sure were real. During the ceremony, several people approached to offer their condolences. "Margaret, we are so sorry. He was a great man. He always spoke of you with so much love." I nodded, thanked them, but the words reached me as if from far away, as if I were underwater. At some point, I heard 2 women whispering behind me. They couldn't have known I was listening. "Poor Margaret. What will she do now without Sebastian? Surely the son will take care of everything. At least she has that." If only they knew. After the religious ceremony, we went to the cemetery. The sky was grey. It threatened rain, but it never fell. I watched the casket as it was lowered into the earth and thought of all the times Sebastian and I had talked about growing old together, seeing our grandchildren grow up, travelling the world when he finally retired. All those plans now buried with him. Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mum, it's time to go." I shook my head. "A few more minutes, please." He sighed, but left me there. I stayed alone in front of the grave until everyone left. I spoke silently to Sebastian, told him how much I loved him, how much I would miss him, how I didn't know how I would live without him. And in the midst of that pain, I remembered his last words: "You are stronger than you think." In the car, on the way back home, Lillian was in the front with Robert. I was in the back, looking out the window. I heard her tell my son in a low voice, "Now we have to talk about practical things, honey. The house, the company, everything needs to be reorganized." Robert mumbled something I couldn't hear. When we arrived at the house, people were waiting. We had prepared refreshments for the funeral attendees. The living room was full of people eating, conversing quietly, sharing anecdotes about Sebastian. I sat in a dining room chair and let everything happen around me. Lillian moved through the house like the perfect hostess. She served coffee, offered food, and thanked people for coming. As if she already owned the place, as if I no longer existed. I saw Joaquin, the lawyer, standing in a corner. Our eyes met, and he nodded slightly. There was something in his eyes, something that seemed to say, "Be patient." But I didn't understand what he meant. The hours passed slowly. People began to leave as night fell. "If you need anything at all, call us," they told me. I thanked them and saw them out the door. Finally, only Robert, Lillian, and I remained. I went up to my bedroom, the room I had shared with Sebastian for so many years. Everything still smelled of him. His robe hanging behind the door, his slippers next to the bed, his book on the nightstand, marked at page 19, which he would never finish reading. I sat on the bed, and for the first time all day, I cried. I cried until I had no more tears, until my body ached from sobbing so much. I lay down on his side of the bed, hugged his pillow, and tried to sleep. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. I was in that state between sleep and wakefulness when I heard voices downstairs. Voices that weren't trying to be quiet. I got up and opened my bedroom door. The voices were coming from the living room. "It's the perfect time," Lillian was saying. "Call the lawyer tomorrow and start the process. This house needs to be in your name as soon as possible." "I don't know, Lillian. We just buried my dad. Don't you think it's too soon?" "Too soon?" Lillian's voice rose. "Robert, we've been living with your mother breathing down our necks for 3 years. 3 years we've been waiting. It's time for this house to be ours. Besides, what's she going to do alone in such a big place? The logical thing is for her to move to a smaller place, more appropriate for her age." "She's my mother," Robert said, but his voice sounded weak, without conviction. "And you're her only son, the heir. Everything your father built is for you, not for her. She's lived her life. Now it's our turn." I felt something freeze inside my chest. I stood there, in the dark hallway, listening to my daughter-in-law planning my life as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be relocated. "And the company," Lillian continued, "you have to take immediate control. Surely your father left everything in order for you to be the new CEO. We need to act fast before the partners start asking questions or wanting to make decisions." "I guess you're right," Robert finally said. "Of course I'm right. I always am." She paused. "And about your mother, I think it's best to be clear with her. Make her understand that things are going to change, that this is our house now, and if she wants to stay, she'll have to accept our rules. Although, honestly, I think it would be better for everyone to find her own place." I returned to my room with silent steps. I sat on the bed, trembling. The pain of the funeral, the emptiness of having lost Sebastian, now mixed with something else. Betrayal. My own son, the child I carried in my womb, who I raised with all my love, was planning to kick me out of my house before his father's body was cold in the grave. I looked towards Sebastian's desk. I remembered his words. In the top drawer of my desk, there is an envelope. It's for you. Open it when I'm gone. I got up and walked toward the desk. I opened the top drawer. There it was. A white envelope with my name written in Sebastian's shaky handwriting. I took it with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a letter and a small key. I started to read. My beloved Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. Forgive me for not having the courage to tell you in person, but I needed to make sure you were protected. 10 years ago, when Lillian entered our lives, something told me I needed to take precautions. Call it intuition, or a simple old businessman's common sense. I transferred all our assets to your name. The house, the mansion in Italy that I bought as a surprise for our anniversary and never got to show you, the bank accounts, the investments. Everything totals approximately $50 million. Robert will receive a share, of course, but only when you decide and under the conditions you set. The company is structured so that no one can make decisions without your approval. This key opens a safe deposit box at the bank. The number is on the envelope. You will find all the documents there. Joaquin knows everything and will help you with whatever you need. Forgive me if this seems cruel toward our son, but a father must protect his family, even from themselves. Be strong, my love. Be the warrior woman you have always been. And remember, we built it together. It is as much yours as it is mine. I love you forever. Sebastian. I read the letter 3 times. My hands stopped trembling. My breathing deepened. For the first time since Sebastian died, I felt something other than pain. I felt clarity. I put the letter and the key in my purse. I washed my face, combed my hair, and went downstairs. It was time to face what was coming. When I went downstairs, it was almost 11 o'clock at night. The house was silent. Robert and Lillian must have finished their conversation and gone up to their room. I headed to the kitchen. I needed tea, something hot to calm the tremor I still felt in my body, despite the clarity Sebastian's letter had given me. While I waited for the water to boil, I sat at the table and reread the letter. Every word, every line. Be strong, my love. Be the warrior woman you have always been. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they weren't just tears of sadness. There was something else in them. Gratitude, love, and a determination I hadn't felt in years. Sebastian had protected me. Even in his death, even knowing he wouldn't be here to defend me, he had found a way to care for me. He had seen what I didn't want to see. He had acted when I was blind with maternal love. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I had heard, everything I now knew. I didn't feel rage, curiously. I felt a strange calm, as if after years of being lost in the fog, I could finally see the path. The next day, I woke up early. I took a long shower, dressed carefully, choosing comfortable but presentable clothes. When I went downstairs, Robert was already in the kitchen drinking coffee. He was surprised to see me. "Mum, I thought you'd sleep late. Yesterday was a really tough day." "I've had tougher days," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Where is Lillian?" "Upstairs, getting ready. We have to leave early. There are a lot of things to sort out at the company." I sat across from him. "Robert, have you thought about how you feel? I know you've been very busy with everything, but your father just died. It's okay to take some time." He avoided my gaze. "Business doesn't wait, Mum. Dad taught me that. Someone has to take the reins." Your father also taught me that family comes first, I said softly. Robert stood up, uncomfortable. I have to go. We'll talk later. And he left the kitchen without finishing his coffee. Minutes later, Lillian came downstairs. She was dressed in a pearl grey suit, high heels, and impeccable makeup. She looked me up and down with that smile I knew so well. Good morning, Margaret. How did you sleep? Fine, I lied. Are you going out? Yes, we have an appointment with some of the company executives. Robert needs to establish his position as the new leader. It's important to do these things quickly, you know, before people start to doubt or look for other options. She poured herself coffee and added, By the way, I think we should talk soon about the house, about how we're going to organize ourselves now that things have changed. That sounds fine, I said calmly. Whenever you want to talk, let me know. She seemed surprised by my quiet tone, but said nothing else. She took her purse and left. As soon as I heard the car pull away, I took my purse and drove to the bank. The branch opened at 9 o'clock. I arrived 5 minutes early and waited in the parking lot, the safe deposit box key tight in my hand. When they opened, I went in and asked to speak to the manager. Good morning. I am Margaret, Sebastian's wife. I need to access a safe deposit box. The manager, a man about 50 years old with glasses, recognized me immediately. Mrs. Margaret, my deepest condolences. Mr. Sebastian was a great man. Of course, please come with me. He led me to a private room and brought the box. When he opened it with my key, I found several manila envelopes, all labeled in Sebastian's handwriting. Deeds to the house, deeds to the property in Italy, bank accounts, investments, company structure, the will. I spent the next 2 hours reviewing every document. Every word Sebastian had written in his letter was true. Everything, absolutely everything, was in my name. The house where we lived, the mansion on the Amalfi Coast he had bought as a surprise for our anniversary, and which I didn't know existed. Accounts in 3 different banks, investments in funds, real estate, stocks. The total value was dizzying, $50,200,000. The company was more complicated. Sebastian had been smart. He had structured everything so that I was the majority shareholder with 55%. Robert had 30%, and the rest was distributed among key employees. But there was a clause. No important decision could be made without my written approval. The will was clear. Robert would receive 30% of the company and $5 million in cash, but only after 1 year of Sebastian's death, and only if I, as the executor of the will, considered him prepared to handle that responsibility. Everything else was mine. There was a personal note attached to the will, dated 3 months before his death. Margaret, if Robert proves to be the man we raised, the man of values we always wanted him to be, give him everything. But if he has allowed them to change him, to lead him away from what is right, use your judgment. No one better than you knows what is fair. I trust you completely. I left the bank with all the documents in my purse. I sat in the car and took a deep breath. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was justice. It was the weight of a responsibility I hadn't asked for, but which I now had to assume. I drove back home. When I arrived, the house was empty. I went up to my room and put the documents in a safe place. Then I called Joaquin. He answered on the second ring. Margaret, I was expecting your call. When can we meet? I asked. Whenever you say. I imagine you went to the bank. Yes, I've seen everything. There was a silence. Sebastian made me promise him that I would protect you, that I would make sure you understood everything. How do you feel? Confused, grateful, sad. many things at once. That's normal. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in my office, we need to review some legal details and talk about the next steps. I'll be there. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the photo of our wedding on the nightstand. Sebastian and I, so young, so full of hope. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for believing in me. That afternoon, Robert and Lillian arrived early. I heard them come in laughing, their cheerful voices coming up the stairs. Lillian was saying something about, everything went perfectly and it's almost ours. I went down for dinner. I had prepared a simple pasta, nothing elaborate. When they saw me, Lillian raised an eyebrow. You cooked. I thought the maid would take care of that. I gave her the day off, I said. I needed to keep busy. We sat at the table. The tension was palpable. Robert ate in silence, avoiding my gaze. Lillian, on the other hand, seemed unable to contain her satisfaction. Margaret, she began, wiping her mouth with a napkin. I think it's time we talk about the future, about how we're going to organize ourselves now that Sebastian is gone. I agree, I said calmly, taking a sip of water. She seemed surprised by my quiet tone, but didn't resist. Good. Look, I know this house holds many memories for you, but it's too big for one person alone. Robert and I have been thinking that the best thing would be for you to look for a more comfortable apartment, more appropriate for your age, a place where you don't have to worry about maintenance, about stairs. A nursing home? I asked directly. Lillian turned red. No, I didn't say that. Just a smaller, more manageable place. We can help you look for something nice. Close to here if you want. And this house? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Well, naturally, Robert will inherit it. He's the son. It's the logical thing. And we need it. We're thinking of having children soon, and we need space. I looked at my son. He still hadn't looked up from his plate. Robert, I said softly, you agree with this? He finally looked at me. I saw shame in his eyes, but also determination. Mum, Lillian is right. This house is too big for you. And I am the heir. It's natural that I take charge of everything. Everything, I repeated. The company, the house, the assets. It's what Dad would have wanted. I nodded slowly. I understand. And when do you expect me to leave? Lillian and Robert exchanged a look. There's no rush, she said with false sweetness. Take your time. A month, maybe 2, for you to find something suitable. How generous, I said, and this time I couldn't hide the sarcasm in my voice. I got up from the table. If you'll excuse me, I'm tired. Good night. I went up to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and, for the first time in days, I smiled. A small, sad, but real smile. They still knew nothing. And tomorrow, after meeting with Joaquin, I would begin to make the decisions that would change everything. That night I heard voices in the hallway. It was past midnight, and I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, processing everything I had discovered. The voices were coming from Robert and Lillian's room, but they were talking so loudly that they could be heard clearly. I told you you needed to be firmer with her, Lillian said with an irritated tone. You act like you're afraid of her. I'm not afraid of her. She's my mother. Exactly. She's your mother, not your owner. Sebastian is dead, Robert. Dead. There's no one telling you what to do anymore. This is your chance to be your own man, to take what is yours by right. I know, but give it time. She just became a widow. Time? How much more time? We've already been waiting 3 years, swallowing her presence, pretending to care. That's enough. Tomorrow you go to the lawyer and start the process of inheriting everything. The house, the money, the company. It's yours by right." There was a silence, then Robert's voice, lower. "What if Dad left things differently?" "How differently? You're the only son. Everything goes to you automatically. That's how the law works." "But Dad was very careful with those things. He always said everything had to be in writing, well structured." "Stop looking for problems where there aren't any," Lillian interrupted him. "Your father built that empire for you, for his son, not for her. She was just the wife, the companion. We wives don't inherit empires. We inherit widows' pensions." I got up from the bed and approached the door. I wanted to hear every word. "Don't talk about my mum like that," Robert said. But his voice sounded weak, without real conviction. "I'm speaking the truth. Look, I respect what she was to your father. Fine. But now things have changed. It's time for her to understand her place. And her place is not in this house. It's not making decisions about the company. It's not interfering in our lives. Her place is in a quiet apartment where she can live out her final years in peace." "Her final years? She's 67, not 90. It's a figure of speech. The point is we need this house. We need the space. We need the privacy. Or do you want to raise our children with your mother monitoring every move we make?" Another silence, longer this time. "You're right," Robert finally said. "Tomorrow I'll talk to Joaquin and sort out all the will stuff. And I'll tell Mum she has to look for another place. Firmly this time." "That's what I like," Lillian purred. "Now come here. We have a lot to celebrate." I returned to my bed. My heart was pounding, but not out of fear, out of something else, out of a cold determination I had never felt before. I had raised that man. I had held him when he cried as a baby, nursed him when he was sick, sacrificed my own dreams so he could have opportunities. And now, manipulated by a woman who only saw dollars where there should have been love, he was willing to throw me onto the street. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I got up, dressed in a cream-coloured suit Sebastian had given me years ago, carefully put on makeup, and went downstairs for breakfast. Robert was already in the kitchen. "Good morning, Mum," he said, surprised to see me so dressed up. "You're going out?" "I have an appointment with Joaquin," I replied, pouring myself coffee, "to review some papers of your father's." I watched him turn pale. "Papers? What papers?" "Will things, I suppose. He asked me to come this morning." I took a sip of coffee, enjoying his discomfort. "You have an appointment with him too?" Yes, I was going to call him today to make an appointment." "What a coincidence," I said with a smile. "Maybe I'll see you there then." I left the house, leaving him speechless. I drove to Joaquin's office with the windows down, feeling the fresh air on my face. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt alive. Joaquin's office was in an elegant building downtown. His secretary showed me in immediately. He rose from his desk when I entered, walked around it, and gave me a fatherly hug. "Margaret, how are you?" "Better than I expected," I admitted, sitting in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Joaquin returned to his chair and clasped his hands on the desk. "I imagine you reviewed everything at the bank. Every document, every page. And how do you feel about it?" I took a moment to answer. Grateful to Sebastian, surprised that he foresaw all this, and sad that it was necessary. Joaquin nodded. "Sebastian came to see me 10 years ago, shortly after Robert married Lillian. He told me he wanted to protect you, that he had a bad feeling about how things might unfold. At first I thought he was exaggerating, but he insisted. 'Joaquin,' he told me, 'Margaret built this with me. Every brick, every dollar. If anything happens to me, I want to make sure no one can take what is hers. My eyes filled with tears. He always protected me. Always. And he made me promise that I would too. Joaquin opened a folder on his desk. Now, let's talk practicalities. As the executor of the will, you have total control over all assets. The official reading of the will must take place within the next few days, with all heirs present. Robert, of course, must be there. Do you want me to arrange to summon him? Yes, please. Margaret, there's something you must understand. What Sebastian did was completely legal. You were married under community property, so everything acquired during the marriage is legally as much yours as his. He simply made sure the papers reflected that reality. He paused. Robert may be surprised. He may be upset. He may even try to fight it legally, although he wouldn't have any basis. I know, I said softly. Are you prepared for that? For the possibility that your son will turn against you when he learns the truth? I closed my eyes for a moment. Joaquin, last night, I heard my son and his wife planning to kick me out of my house. My own house. The house I helped pay for with my work, with my effort. I heard that woman call me the companion, as if I hadn't been Sebastian's partner in everything. And the worst thing, the thing that hurt me the most, was hearing Robert agree with her. I opened my eyes and looked directly at Joaquin. My son has already turned against me. I am only defending what is mine. Joaquin smiled sadly. Sebastian would be proud of you. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing every legal detail. The reading of the will was scheduled for 3 days later, Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Joaquin would officially notify Robert. One more thing, Joaquin said as I prepared to leave. The mansion in Italy. Did Sebastian ever tell you about it? I shook my head. Never. I didn't know it existed. He bought it 5 years ago. He said he wanted it to be a surprise for your 50th anniversary. He planned to take you there and reveal it then. He pulled out an envelope with photographs. It's beautiful, Margaret. It's on the Amalfi Coast, overlooking the sea. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, a garden with lemon trees, a dream place. I looked at the photographs. The house was white, with huge windows overlooking the Mediterranean. I could imagine Sebastian there, smiling, waiting for me with open arms. He wanted us to have a sanctuary, I whispered, a place just for us. And now you have it. It is completely yours. You can go whenever you want. Live there if you decide to. Sell it. Rent it. Whatever you decide. I put the photographs in my purse. Thank you, Joaquin, for everything. Don't thank me. I'm only fulfilling a friend's last wish. I left his office feeling stronger. I drove back home, but didn't go in immediately. I stayed in the car, in the driveway, looking at the house we had bought with so much effort, the house where we had raised Robert, the house they now wanted to take from me. It's not going to happen, I said aloud. This is my house, and no one is going to kick me out of here. I went in and found Lillian in the living room talking on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly hung up. Margaret, good that you're back. I need to talk to you. Tell me, I replied, dropping my purse on the sofa. I've been thinking about the room assignments when you move out. The master bedroom, yours and Sebastian's, should be for Robert and me. After all, we are the new head couple of the family. I stared at her. The new head couple of the family? Yes, well, it's natural. Robert is the heir, the owner of all this now. The owner? I repeated slowly. Yes. The son inherits everything. That's how it works. And I, as his wife, have certain rights too. She looked at me with that condescending smile. Don't worry. We'll make sure you're comfortable in your new place. We can even help you with the first month's rent, if necessary. Something inside me broke, or maybe it strengthened. I'm not sure. Lillian, I said with a calmness that surprised even myself, I think you should wait for the reading of the will before making plans. She laughed. The reading of the will? It's just a formality. We all know how things are going to turn out. Oh, yes, I said. And how are they going to turn out? Robert inherits everything. I become the lady of this house. And you, well, you'll have your widow's pension and can live peacefully somewhere more appropriate. I smiled, a small smile that made her frown. We'll see, I simply said. And I went up to my room. The next 3 days were strange. I moved through the house like a ghost, observing everything with a new clarity. I saw Lillian measuring the living room walls, talking on the phone with decorators about the renovation we would be doing soon. I heard her planning elegant dinners, social events, all as if she were already the undisputed owner of the house. Robert avoided looking me in the eyes. He spent most of the time on his computer or talking on the phone about the company. On the few occasions we were in the same room, the silence between us was heavy, uncomfortable. The night before the reading of the will, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake looking at the photographs of the mansion in Italy. In one of them, the sunset over the sea was visible, the orange and pink colours painting the sky. Sebastian had chosen that place for us to live out our final years in peace, away from the noise, away from the betrayal. I wish you were here, I whispered to the photograph. I wish we could be there together, as you planned. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up. I took a long shower, washed my hair, and dried it carefully. From the closet, I took out a silver-grey dress Sebastian had bought me for our last anniversary. It makes you look elegant and powerful, he had told me when I tried it on. I put on makeup, put on the pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman who looked back at me was not the same one I had been 3 weeks ago. There was something different in my eyes, something stronger. I went downstairs at 8 o'clock. Lillian was already having breakfast, dressed in a tight black suit and red heels. She looked like she was going to close an important business deal, not a will reading. Good morning, Margaret, she said cheerfully. Big day today, right? Everything will finally be clear. Yes, I simply replied, pouring myself coffee. Finally. Robert came down 30 minutes later. He looked nervous. He was wearing one of the suits his father had given him. I wondered if he had chosen it consciously, or if it was a coincidence. Mum, he said, clearing his throat. About what's going to happen today, I want you to know that I'm going to make sure you're well taken care of, that you don't lack anything. I looked up at him. Oh, really? Yes, you're my mother. I'm not going to leave you destitute. What a relief, I said without emotion. Lillian took his arm. Sweetheart, we should go now. We don't want to be late. The three of us left the house, them in Robert's car, me in mine. During the entire drive to Joaquin's office, I felt a strange calm, as if I were floating, observing everything from the outside. We arrived 10 minutes early. Joaquin's secretary showed us into a large conference room. There was a long, dark wood table, leather chairs, and large windows overlooking the city. Robert and Lillian sat together on one side of the table. I sat on the other side, alone. Joaquin entered at exactly 10 o'clock, accompanied by his assistant, who carried a thick folder. He sat at the head of the table and looked at all of us. Good morning. Thank you for coming. We are here for the official reading of Sebastian's will, which he put in writing and signed before a notary exactly 8 years ago. with an update 6 months ago. He opened the folder. Before we begin, does anyone have any questions? 8 years? Robert asked, surprised. I didn't know Dad had made a will so long ago. Your father was a cautious man, Joaquin said. He always wanted to make sure everything was in order. He looked at Lillian. Mrs. Lillian, any questions? No, I'm ready, she said, settling into her chair with a confident smile. Good. Then we begin. Joaquin pulled out several documents. Sebastian's will is clear and direct. I will read the main sections and then answer any questions. He cleared his throat and began. I, Sebastian, in full possession of my mental faculties, declare the following as my last will and testament. First, I want to state for the record that everything I own I built alongside my wife, Margaret. She was not only my life partner, but my business partner in every aspect. Without her work, her sacrifice, her intelligence, and her unconditional support, nothing I have would exist. Therefore, everything I have achieved is as much hers as it is mine. I looked at Lillian. Her smile was beginning to waver. Joaquin continued. Regarding my material assets, I declare the following. The house located at 212 Spring Street, currently valued at $2,300,000, is the property of my wife, Margaret. It was acquired during our marriage and legally transferred to her name 10 years ago. Robert straightened in his chair. What? The house is in Mom's name? Joaquin looked at him. Please, Robert, let me finish. There will be time for questions later. He returned to the document. The property on the Amalfi Coast, Italy, is also the property of Margaret, acquired as a surprise gift for our anniversary and transferred to her name at the time of purchase. All bank accounts, totaling approximately $35 million, are jointly held, with Margaret as the principal and sole beneficiary. This can't be, Lillian murmured, pale. The investments in funds and real estate, valued at an additional $13 million, are also structured with Margaret as the principal holder. Joaquin paused and looked at Robert. Regarding the company, the structure is as follows. Margaret owns 55% of the shares. Robert, my son, owns 30%. The remaining 15% is distributed among key employees of the company. Robert had turned white. But I'm the son. I should inherit the company. You have 30%, Joaquin said calmly. It's not insignificant, but your father was clear. The company was built by him and Margaret together. Therefore, she must have the majority control. And what else? Lillian asked, her voice trembling. What else does he leave Robert? Joaquin returned to the document. To my son Robert, I leave, in addition to the 30% of the company, the sum of $5 million in cash to be delivered 1 year after my death, and subject to Margaret's approval as the executor of the will. Subject to her approval, Lillian shouted, standing up. What kind of will is this? Robert is the son, the legitimate heir. The heir of what his father decided to leave him, Joaquin said firmly. Please sit down, Mrs. Lillian. I am not finished. She sat down, but she was trembling with rage. Joaquin continued. I want to make clear why I have structured my inheritance this way. Margaret deserves everything she has because she earned it. She worked as hard as I did, sacrificed as much as I did, and never asked for anything in return but love and respect. To my son Robert, I leave what I consider fair, but I have placed safeguards because as a father, it is my duty to protect my family, even from themselves. If Robert proves to be the man of values we tried to raise, I am sure Margaret will be generous with him. But if he allows them to change him, to lead him away from what is right, I trust in my wife's judgment to make the appropriate decisions. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear Lillian's agitated breathing, the accelerated beat of my own heart. "There is one final clause," Joaquin said. A clause that Sebastian added 6 months before his death. He read, "If at any time my wife Margaret is threatened, pressured, humiliated, or mistreated by any family member in order to obtain assets or control over them, that person automatically loses all rights to their inheritance, and everything passes entirely to Margaret." Lillian stood up again, this time screaming, "This is ridiculous! A man cannot leave all his fortune to his wife and leave his son practically nothing. We are going to fight this. We are going to court." Joaquin looked at her coldly. "You can try, Mrs. Lillian. But I warn you that this will was reviewed by 3 different lawyers, signed before a notary, and is completely legal. Sebastian had every right to dispose of his assets as he wished, and he chose to protect his wife, who legally had a right to everything from the moment they married under community property." Robert finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Mum, you knew this." I looked him in the eyes for the first time since we had arrived. "No, I didn't know until after the funeral, until I found the letter your father left me." "And you didn't think to tell me? To talk to me?" "The same way you thought to talk to me before planning to kick me out of my own house," I responded calmly. He turned red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what you were planning," I said, my voice firm but not shouting. "I heard every word. I heard how your wife called me the companion. I heard how you planned to take everything and send me to an apartment, as if I were an old piece of furniture that needed to be gotten rid of." "Margaret, that's not—" Lillian began. "Don't speak to me," I interrupted her, looking directly at her for the first time with all the force I felt. "You have no right to address me after everything you've done." Lillian was speechless, but said nothing else. Robert had his head in his hands, breathing heavily. Joaquin remained seated, observing the scene with a professional expression, but a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "There's something else you should know," I said, taking the photographs of the mansion in Italy from my purse. I placed them on the table in front of Robert. "Your father bought this 5 years ago. It was going to be our sanctuary, the place where we would spend our final years together. He never got to show it to me because the illness came first." I pushed the photos toward him. "Look at it closely. This is what your father built thinking of us, of our history, of our love. While you and your wife were planning to take everything, he was thinking about how to make me happy until the very last day." Robert took the photos with trembling hands. I saw tears rolling down his cheeks. "Mum, No," I interrupted him. "It's my turn to talk now. For 3 years I endured comments, disdain, humiliation. I watched myself become invisible in my own home. How my place in the kitchen, at the table, in every corner, was taken by someone else. I kept quiet because I thought I was being selfish, that I should make space for the new generation, that I should accept that my time had passed." I paused, feeling the emotion threatening to break my voice, but I held firm. "But your father taught me something in his last weeks of life. He taught me that having dignity is not selfishness, that defending what is yours is not greed, that demanding respect is not being bitter." "Mum, please," Robert pleaded. "I took care of your father every day of his illness," I continued. "Every night when the pain was unbearable, every morning when the medicine made him vomit. I was there, holding him, cleaning him, loving him. And where were you? At the office, in meetings, too busy to spend time with the man who gave you everything." My voice finally broke. "Your father asked for you. Every day he asked, 'Will Robert come today?' And every day I had to invent excuses so he wouldn't feel abandoned by his own son. Robert was openly sobbing now. I'm sorry. God, Mum, I'm so sorry. Lillian grabbed his arm. Robert, don't let her manipulate you. She's playing with your feelings to take everything. Something exploded inside me. I stood up. I placed my hands on the table and looked at Lillian with an intensity that made her shrink in her chair. Manipulation? You talk to me about manipulation? You who from the first day looked for ways to alienate my son from me? You who turned every family dinner into a silent battlefield? You who waited for my husband's death, like someone waiting for a store liquidation? I took a deep breath. But what hurts me the most, what truly breaks my heart, is not you. It's that my son allowed you to do it. It's that my Robert, the boy I raised to be good, honest, and loyal, turned into someone who plans to throw his own mother onto the street before his father's body is cold in the grave. It's not like that, Robert said between sobs. I didn't want to. I just… What? Just what, Robert? Just following your wife's orders? Just wanting to make Lillian happy, no matter who you hurt in the process? He didn't answer. He just cried, his head in his hands. Joaquin intervened in a soft voice. I think everyone needs to take a breath. This is a very emotional situation for everyone. No, I said, sitting back down. I need to finish this now. I looked at Robert. Your father put the decision to give you the $5 million in my hands. I could deny you. According to the will, I have every right to do so, especially after what I heard. But I'm not going to do that, because unlike some people in this room, I did uphold the values your father and I tried to teach you. Then you'll give me the money? He asked in a whisper. With one condition, I said. A single, non-negotiable condition. Lillian tensed. What condition? You decide, Robert, I said, completely ignoring her and looking only at my son. Decide if you want to be part of this family or if you want the money. If you choose to stay married to Lillian, if you choose to continue letting her dictate how you should treat your mother, then I will give you your $5 million, and we will never have contact again. You will become a stranger to me. You will live your life, and I will live mine, and we will act as if we don't know each other. That's blackmail, Lillian screamed. Or, Robert asked, ignoring his wife, or you choose to be my son again. You choose to rebuild what was broken. You choose to go back to being the man your father and I raised. And if you choose that, you will not only have your $5 million, but we will work together at the company, make decisions as a family, and I will make sure that you eventually have everything your father wanted you to have. I paused. But you can't have both, Robert. You can't have the family and the poison. You have to choose. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert stared at the table, tears still falling onto the dark wood. Lillian looked at him with panic in her eyes. Robert, Lillian said in a sharp voice, you can't be considering this. She's asking you to leave me. I'm your wife. We married before God. You asked me to abandon my mother, Robert responded without looking up. How is this different? It's completely different. She's lived her life. We have everything ahead of us. My mother just lost the love of her life, Robert said, and his voice sounded different, firmer. And instead of comforting her, of supporting her, I planned to throw her out of her own home. He finally looked up and met my gaze. What kind of man have I become, Mum? A man who can change, I said softly. If you choose to. Robert stood up. Lillian also got up, clinging to his arm. Robert, if you leave this room without me, if you choose her over me, our marriage is over. Lillian threatened. He looked at her for the first time with clarity, as if he were truly seeing her after years of blindness. "I know," he simply said. "You know? And you're going to throw away everything we have for this?" "What do we have, Lillian?" he asked in a tired voice. "What have you and I built besides plans to get money that isn't ours? Have you ever loved me? Or did you only love what you thought you were going to inherit?" Lillian opened and closed her mouth several times. She had no answer. Robert broke free from her grip and walked toward where I was sitting. He knelt down in front of me, something he hadn't done since he was a small child. "Mum," he said, his voice breaking, "I've been an idiot, a terrible son. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I ask for it anyway. I ask you to give me the chance to be your son again, to honor Dad's memory by being the man he wanted me to be." I held his face in my hands, as I did when he was little and had nightmares. "Robert, you never stopped being my son. Never. But you did stop acting like one. Are you sure you want to change that? Are you sure you're ready for the consequences?" "I'm sure," he said, and in his eyes, for the first time in years, I saw my true son, the boy I had raised with so much love. "This is ridiculous," Lillian spat. "Robert, think carefully about what you're doing. Think about everything we're going to lose." "I already lost the most important thing," Robert said, standing up but not letting go of my hand. "I lost my father's respect. I lost years with my mother. I lost my own dignity." He looked at her. "And yes, Lillian, I think I'm going to lose you too. But honestly, after hearing my mother, after understanding what we've done, I'm not sure that's really a loss." Lillian looked at him with disbelief, then with anger. "You're an idiot, a weak fool, manipulated by an old woman who—" "Be careful how you finish that sentence," Joaquin interrupted her in a voice of steel. "You are in my office, and I will not tolerate insults toward any of the people present." Lillian grabbed her purse with abrupt movements. "I'm leaving, and when you come to your senses, Robert, when you realize the mistake you're making, don't come looking for me. This is over." She stormed out of the room, slamming the door. The silence after Lillian left was heavy but clean, like the air after a storm. Robert was still standing next to me, holding my hand as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Joaquin carefully closed the folder. "I think that's enough for today. The official documents need to be signed, but that can wait a few days. Robert, you'll need to seek legal counsel for your divorce. I can recommend some colleagues if you wish." "Thank you, Joaquin," Robert said hoarsely. "For everything. For taking care of my mother. For fulfilling my father's wishes." Joaquin nodded. "Your father was my friend. The only thing I regret is that he's not here to see this, to see that his son finally woke up." We left the office together, Robert and I. In the parking lot, he stopped next to his car, but made no move to open it. "Mum," he said in a small voice, "can I go home with you? To our house? I mean, I don't know if I have the right to ask, but I don't want to be alone right now." I embraced him. He was taller than me, bigger, but in that moment he was my boy again. "Of course you can, son. You always can." We drove back home, him following me in his car. When we went in, the house felt different, lighter, as if a dark weight had been lifted from the walls. I made coffee as I used to, when Robert would come to visit on Sundays, and we would sit in the kitchen talking for hours. We sat at the table, the same place where thousands of family meals had taken place. "Tell me about Dad," Robert said after a long silence. "About his last days. About what you talked about when you were alone." And I told him. I told him about the nights Sebastian couldn't sleep, and I would tell him stories of our early years. I told him how his father spoke of him with pride, remembering when he was a child, when they played football in the yard, when Robert helped him at the office during the summers. I told him the times Sebastian asked about him, hoping he would come. Robert cried silently as I spoke. "I hate myself," he finally said. "How could I have been so blind? How could I let her convince me that you were the problem?" "Because you wanted to believe your life was perfect," I said softly. "Because it was easier to blame a quiet mother than to confront a manipulative wife. Because love, or what you thought was love, clouded your judgment." "It wasn't love," he said bitterly. "It was codependency. It was fear of being alone. It was ego." He looked up at me. "How can you not hate me after everything I did?" "Because you are my son," I replied simply. "And because your father taught me something important. People can change. They can make terrible mistakes and still find their way back. But only if they truly want to." "I want to," he said fervently. "I want to be better. I want to honor Dad's memory. I want to get back the time we lost with you." "Then we start today," I said. "Step by step, day by day." We spent the rest of the afternoon together. Robert went up to his old room, the one he had occupied before getting married, and began packing his things. "We'll leave Lillian's bags in the hallway. She can come for them whenever she wants," he said. "But I don't want anything to remind me of these last 3 years." That night, I made dinner, Sebastian's and Robert's favorite dish, roast chicken with potatoes and vegetables. We sat together to eat, alone in that large house, and for the first time in years, it felt like a home. "Mum," Robert said as we ate, "about the company. I know Dad left you majority control. I want you to know that I completely respect that. I can work under your direction. I can learn from you as I should have from the beginning." "We will work together," I said, "like your father and I did, as partners. You have new knowledge, fresh ideas. I have experience and your father's vision. Together we can make the company grow even more." He smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't seen on his face in a long time. I would like that. The following days were a period of adjustment. Lillian came one afternoon, accompanied by her mother, to pick up her things. I stayed in my room while they packed. I heard shouts, slamming doors, whispered insults. Robert stood firm. When they left, he came up to see me. "It's done," he said. "She's gone. She asked me for one last chance. She cried. She begged me. But I remembered everything she said about you, everything we planned to do to you, and I couldn't pretend that hadn't happened." "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Yes," he admitted, "but it's a necessary pain, like having an infected tooth pulled. It hurts, but you know it's the right thing to do." 2 weeks later, Joaquin came to the house with the final documents. Everything was officially in order. I was, legally, the owner of everything Sebastian and I had built. And Robert had his inheritance, the one his father deemed fair. "There's one more thing," Joaquin said, pulling out an additional envelope. "Sebastian asked me to give you this exactly 1 month after his death, not before." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. It was another letter. "My beloved Margaret, if you are reading this, it means 1 month has passed. I hope Joaquin has fulfilled my wishes and that everything is as I planned. I hope you are well, that you are strong. I know these days have been difficult. I know you have cried. I know you have missed me. I miss you too, wherever I am now. The mansion in Italy is yours. I want you to go, to see it, to decide if you want to live there. If you decide to stay in our home, that's fine. If you decide to sell everything and start over somewhere else, That's fine too. The important thing is that you are happy, that you live the rest of your years with the freedom you deserve. And about Robert, I trust that you have made the right decision. If our son found his way back to you, help him, forgive him, guide him. But if he chose the wrong path, let him go. Sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love. I love you, my warrior. I will love you for all eternity. Live for both of us. Sebastian. Tears streamed down my face as Robert read the letter over my shoulder. He knew, my son whispered. He knew I had lost my way, and he still gave me the opportunity to find myself again. 3 months later, Robert and I flew to Italy. I wanted him to see the mansion, to understand his father's dream. When we arrived, the view took my breath away. It was more beautiful than in the photographs. The sea sparkled under the Mediterranean sun, the lemon trees filled the air with their sweet scent, and the White House seemed to glow against the intense blue sky. It's perfect, Robert said, walking through the garden. Dad had good taste. Your father had good dreams, I corrected, and he worked his whole life to make them come true. We spent a week there. We had breakfast on the terrace overlooking the sea. We walked through the nearby little towns. We talked for hours about the past, about the future, about how to rebuild what had been broken. One night, sitting on the terrace under the stars, Robert told me, "Mum, I know I can't change the past. I know I hurt Dad and I hurt you, but I want you to know that every day I'm going to work to be better, to be the son you deserved to have." You already are, I said, taking his hand. The simple fact that you are here, that you chose correctly, proves that your father and I did something right. I decided to spend the summers in Italy and the rest of the year at home, running the company alongside Robert. He proved to be an excellent partner, respectful, hard-working. Slowly, the company grew even more under our joint direction. A year after Sebastian's funeral, Robert met a woman named Carmina. She was a teacher, sweet, genuine. The first time he brought her over for dinner, I was nervous. But from the first moment, I saw the difference. The way she treated me with respect, the way she admired the relationship between Robert and me, the way she spoke of building a family based on love and mutual respect. I like her, I told Robert after she left. She's good for you. Do you really think so? He asked, and I could see how much he valued my opinion now. I really do. Your father would be happy. 2 years after Sebastian's death, I sat in the yard of our house, the place where I had so often sat with him. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink, the same colours as the sunset in Italy. I thought of everything that had happened, the pain of losing Sebastian, the betrayal of discovering Robert and Lillian's plans, the strength I found in myself when I thought I had nothing left, the joy of getting my son back, the peace of knowing I had made the right decisions. We did it, I whispered to the air, as if Sebastian could hear me. You protected our family. You gave me the strength to defend it. And our son found his way back. A gentle breeze blew, rustling the leaves of the trees, and for a moment, I could swear I felt a caress on my cheek, like the ones Sebastian gave me every morning for 45 years. I smiled, the same smile I had given at the funeral, when everyone thought I was broken. But I knew the truth, the smile of a woman who had lost a lot, but had gained something more important. Her dignity, her strength, and the certainty that true love never dies. It only transforms. And in that moment, under the orange-coloured sunset sky, I felt completely at peace. Because in the end, I had not only survived, I had won.